Hello and welcome from Germany, Munich. I feel very proud and honored that I'm allowed to speak at the Russian Nodes User Group, the project that we have done lately. It's about HCL connection split, make 2 out of 1. So in the next 30 to 40 minutes, we will look into the details. What did we do there? What were the challenges? How did we resolve it? And in the end, we will also have a Q&A session where you can ask your questions. I'm looking forward to your questions. I'm pretty sure you will have the one or the other question. Before we dive into the topic here, a few words about the company I'm working for, Beck et al., founded about 30 years ago in Munich. We have 3 main areas where we are. This is enable digital work, form data to results, shape a flexible IT. Our focus here is enable digital work in regards of HCL connections here. When we look at what we are delivering to our customers in connections, you see from design, overbuild, scale, operate, you find almost everything that you need to run, to set up, to run connections successfully, to implement changes, integrations, customizations, and so on. A few more information about our company. I think you can take a look at that later. Beck et al. Is based in Germany with the headquarter in Germany. We also have a subsidiaries in Romania, Beck et al. In Romania, and in Brazil in Florianopolis. We are not only focusing on HCL, we have a very strong footprint in Amazon Web Services, also in Microsoft, Okta for identity access management, and some other major technology partners. The customers we are having are usually German-based larger customers like Continental, like Infineon, like Lufthansa, but you see also some other companies that you might not know. What is common amongst all these customers is that they are on a global scale. They are worldwide operating, and we help them with our worldwide operating team. Coming to our connections split here. So that's me, Andreas Weinbrecht, born in Stuttgart, living in Munich, account manager at Beck et al., meaning that I'm responsible that the customer is happy and that the customer wants to continue working with us. In addition, I'm also leader of the DNUG focus group Connections. DNUG is the German Nodes User Group. And since 2018, I'm IBM champion and now HCL ambassador. My colleague Martin, who will be there for the Q&A session later, is our senior IT architect. He's working with Connections since 2007, and you see here his experience, what he's focusing on, and more. So he comes from a domino history as well as I am, and so we are trying to make the best out of the products, being it domino with Connections, being it Microsoft Active Directory and Connections. What is the situation that we want to talk about? The situation is there is a larger customer that wants to do a spin-off. So we see here a large company and a smaller company. Both have connections. The one has already connections, the one will get a connections. That was the order that we received. Please make sure that we can set up connections. Please make sure that the data that are relevant for us are there. Please make sure that the people are happy. Please make sure that it runs as expected, more or less. Of course, they not only take over connections, they also are using Active Directory, SAP, many other solutions that they need for their business, either for the core business or as a supporting service. So the situation, we have this customer with around 145,000 connections profiles. So people who can connect to connections. We have per week around 40,000 unique accesses in connections. The spin-off of the company has around 30,000 users. So the new company will be a large company from the very beginning, or is a large company from the very beginning. The business unit wants to keep the data and the business unit wants an own connections instance. That's where we are. So large customer, 145,000 connections profiles, many integrations, many customizations, and the spin-off says, okay, we want to take with us the data that we are allowed to take with us, and we want to have the enterprise social network based on connections. The challenges that we have here set up connections in AWS, Amazon Web Services with cloud native services. You will find more details about this challenge in the session from Martin on Friday. So here's the link to the session on Friday. The other challenge was identify social objects in scope. Which social objects is the spin-off allowed to take with him? Which social objects do they need? And how can we make sure that they have the right data? Not too much, but also not, there should nothing be left behind. The next challenge, identify user accounts that belong to the spin-off and reduce hide content not in scope for spin-off in the new connections instance. Other challenges around this project itself are like Active Directory not available in the beginning. So we had to deal with it and we had to formulate our requirements towards Active Directory. Other challenges like legal topics, legal aspects to be clarified, where we had to wait for the one or the other decision so that we could continue with the right approach. And another challenge, we went from version 6.0 CR5 to version 6.5 CR1. So we did a migration and upgrade, you can say, and in a new infrastructure. The approach itself is described here on this slide. So first, we have to set up the connections instance. Then we do a data migration. Then we reduce the content. If you go through this step by step, you will see on the left side, you see here, this is the old existing instance. You see on the right side, this is the new instance. Here, the old instance, here, the new instance. So first of all, install connections. It is installed. Then the next step is current data to do a test data migration, check whether people can access it as they, and whether any kind of data is missing. Next step is customize the new instance. So checking whether the right people, whether the customizations that are required are there, make sure that they work as expected, define what is needed, and let it test by the people. Then data reduction test. So you can imagine if there are just 30,000 users instead of 145,000 users, there are some users too many. They have to be taken away. And in addition, content that does not belong to the spin-off should be taken away. And this needs to be tested so that we know the work or the approach that we will choose is the right one, and the result is what we will expect. Data reduction test. Then during the weekend, after all the preparation is done, copy the current data to the new instance, make a final data migration. So shut down the instance, reduce the data, make sure that everything looks as it should be, and then afterwards start it again. We will go into details here on the next slides. Before we go into these details, how we did it in detail, here are the prerequisites. So what do we need so that we can do as we just described? There needs to be a hosting environment. It needs to be set up. It needs to be running properly with all the components that we need: network, domain name, DNS, IP addresses, all of this available. This is a prerequisite. If that is not there, then you can only start, but you run against borders and you will not be successful. Next prerequisite, we need the necessary access rights. Ideally, we can do everything. If that is not possible, you need to define exactly what kind of access rights you need to do the tasks that have been defined earlier. The data can be transferred between the current connections and the future connections infrastructure. Very important. The old connections infrastructure is in the corporate data center. The new connections infrastructure is at Amazon Web Services. So here, this is one of the important prerequisites, that the data can be transferred and that the bandwidth is good enough. LDAP directory setup and users are in there. Prerequisite, if the prerequisite is not met as we experience it, then you have to think about alternative solutions, so working with the original Active Directory and do the change at a certain point in time. One important thing here, the users need a unique identifier to identify them in connections. And this unique identifier has to be identical between the old infrastructure and the new infrastructure, so that it's clear that the user can access his own data again after the switch to the new connections instance. This is what I just described here. And we need to know who of the 145,000 users belongs to the new company. Who is it? And there we need a flag or an attribute to identify these users clearly. So there is no guessing. It is clear you either belong to the new company or you do not belong. Mail gateway is available. Access for internals, admins, functional accounts, etc. needs to be defined. And we need third-party tools, especially the HCL Connections link exchanger, to change URL from the old URL to the new URL. Some of the prerequisites, or let's say the most important prerequisites, most of them were met. Some of them were not met. And when they were not met, you have to become creative. Talking about the social objects in scope. So these objects, or these social objects here, need to be clarified. So these are the ones that are in the original connections infrastructure, profiles, communities, blocks, etc. And you need to define, do we want to take over them, yes or no? If you want to take over them, how do we identify whether they belong to the new company or whether they belong to the original company? We discussed this very intensively during the concept phase with the customer. And these were the results here. Profiles. If the user is defined in the Active Directory by a group membership that he belongs to a new company, then he's in scope for the new connections infrastructure. If he is not in scope. Easy like that, black, white. The homepage goes along with the profile, so the homepage of the user. Communities, as well as blogs, forum, wiki, they can have several owners. If there is at least one owner belonging to the new company, then this community, blog, forum, wiki will be available in the new connections infrastructure. Bookmarks. Bookmarks, there can be only one owner. So if you are the owner of the bookmarks and you belong to the new company, then you will see the data also in the new infrastructure. And for the files, this is different. So looking at the files itself that belong to a user, we're checking who is the original author of the file and does he belong to the new company or not. And activities, again, at least one owner belongs to spin-off. This is not 100%. There is always some kind of a gray area or a gray zone where people say, well, but this, I have worked on this or I've worked on that, and it is not there. So it is important when you do something like that, that you try to make no irreversible step, so that you can always go back and provide information to the customer. If that is not possible, you have to define it very, very clearly, so that the communication towards the end users is 100%. What we created here is a tool done by ourselves, which looks directly into the connections databases and identifies here different areas that are relevant for us. You see here community, blogs, wikis, and so on. And this is visible to every user in the company. And they can see here, if there is such a symbol, then they know it will appear in the new infrastructure or it will not appear in the new infrastructure. And we told them, if you want a community to be available in the new infrastructure, you have to make sure that at least one person who belongs to the new infrastructure is owner. I will go back one slide. So looking here, communities, at least one owner belongs to the spin-off. Once they change the information here, when they go into the community and they say, okay, you and you are also owners and you belong to the spin-off company, then it appears here in addition. And this is always current status lookup. So you always see it how it looks right now. No exchanging of Excel sheets, no data somewhere that have to be brought together. It looks directly at the source. And that was one of the success criteria in our project, that we could make it very transparent, very easy for the users to see, will I have my data, will I have my community at a new company, yes or no? The same appears here with Wiki. You see here two icons, so the people could see this is in the one company and in the other company. And in the end, it's here the same. So these are standalone wikis, standalone blogs, standalone forum, standalone activities. A community that has a wiki, that has a blog, that has a forum is always one entity. So if the community is available in the new infrastructure, then you will have it completely. The other aspects here are for standalone blogs, standalone wikis, standalone forum, etc. Again, so you identify a wiki and you say, oh, this wiki should be available in the new infrastructure. What should I do? It does not look like now. Make sure that there is one owner of this wiki who belongs to the new infrastructure. In addition, we put here some links. So when a person clicks on it, a CSV file is downloaded and it can be further used in Excel or in any other tools for further analysis. When someone wants to know, okay, how does it look like? I want to make some filters over it. I want to know in detail how it looks like. Why was that important? Because we're talking about quite some data. So more than 20,000 communities are there. More than 20,000 communities. And no one knows all communities and no one can say whether one is important or one is not important. So we had to find a way of making it very easy, making it very transparent and open to everyone. So the communication was, here's the link, look into. If you see the symbol of the new company, then you know this will be there. If you don't see it, make the necessary actions as described earlier to make sure that you will find it in the future in the new infrastructure. And the users could look at community, see, okay, I'm the owner of these communities, I'm a member, I'm following, and communities that I've created. So people could check whether the most important communities for them are there or not. Why do I emphasize this aspect of the project so much? Because this was one of the key criteria to make this project a success, so that the people have always the overview what will be available or not. More than one time we have been asked, when is a freeze period, until when should users define which community belongs to the new company or not? What we always told them, until the last minute before we shut down the instance and start the migration. So it was not the last minute, but maybe 3 hours earlier. So on a Friday, noontime, we said this is the deadline. If there is an owner of if the owner of the community is in a new company, it will be available, otherwise not. Data reduction approach. So once the data are there in the new infrastructure, we had to reduce the data or take away the data. And there are different approaches possible. For profiles, it's quite easy because the new Active Directory has only users that belong to the new company. So we have our profiles with more than 200,000 profiles database with more than 200,000 profiles inside. 145,000 active profiles were there before we started it. Then the TDI assembly line started, checked the new Active Directory, identified around 30,000 users, and deactivated the other ones. The name of the users, they stay. So out of the box, the person is grayed out and it says in brackets, this user is inactive. This customer has also data privacy toolkit. So after a while, when data privacy toolkit runs over the profiles, it will be anonymized. Homepage, as described before. Communities, hiding, closing communities. So we discussed a lot, what should we do? How should we do it? Should we delete them? How can we restore them? What needs to be done? Our procedure that we define in the end together with the customer is that those communities that we have identified being not in scope for the new company, remove all the members, including the owner. We set an admin account as owner, and we set the community to private so that it's restricted. So it cannot be found anymore by the users. What happens if 1 week later someone says, I am missing an important community? Then we ask the person, what is the community you're missing? Please provide us the link. Could also be the link to the original community and the original infrastructure. Then we go into the community. Then there is an approval process so that we can set the right person as owner. And this person has to then fill the members of the community and can change it from private, restricted to moderated or an open community. Blocks, we use the flag to hide them. Forum, delete them to trash. There were not so many standalone forum. Wiki, as blocks, we use the flag. Bookmarks goes along with profiles. Files goes along with profiles, and activities we deleted to trash. Most important were the communities. Here was the focus that we do not lose any relevant content. So there were a lot of work to be done before we started on the weekend, a lot of work to do the concept, the design phase, to test, to check, to set up the infrastructure, to make sure that it runs as expected, to align with HCL, whether we can use the AWS native services in the cloud like EKS for Kubernetes service or Elasticsearch service. But then this procedure that you see here was the procedure that we started on a Friday afternoon. So we shut down the original connections infrastructure. We synchronized the files from the original to the spin-off connections instance. We transferred the database and performed the schema update because of the higher release version 6.5. And then we started connections, original and the spin-off. We opened the connections, the original one, for all the users. So I think we started on Friday afternoon, 3 p.m. And after a few hours, we opened connections for the users in the original infrastructure again. So there was a downtime of, let's say, 3 or 4 hours maximum. Then we continued in the new infrastructure. We deactivated the users. We did some changes in the connection. So the URL changed from old connections.company.org to new connections.company.com. Change internal connections administrative tasks, change connections administrative user accounts. So things that belong to a certain account, Active Directory account, need to be changed. And then we started to reduce the content. This took a few days. And on a Tuesday, we were finished with everything. We checked it, we tested it, we made sure that it works as defined. And on Wednesday morning, it was available again. So this is in detail what we did during the migration procedure, data reduction procedure that started on a Friday. Questions that we hear from time to time: is it complicated to do that? Is it tricky? Do you need a lot of knowledge? Well, the answer is, as always, if you know what you have to do and if you know that it will work, it is not complicated. If you have done it already once before, it is not complicated. If you have never done it before, if you've never thought through it, if you have never been in that situation before, you might think about, okay, what could happen? What should I take care of? What is important? And then it might look complicated. We did this project together with our partner, Bellsoft from Switzerland. The one or the other might know them. So as they did it before, we worked together, especially in the part of the data reduction, to make this project a success. Thank you again, Sandra. Thank you again, Markus. It was a great time working with you together on this project. So these were the challenges that we have experienced. These were the steps that we needed to do. These were the details that we thought might be interesting for you. So we're now coming to our Q&A session. I see already the moderator is online. So please ask your questions if you have any. I'm here for you.
Andreas, good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your presentation.
На самом деле сейчас вопросов нет.
Indeed, so far there are no questions.
Я думаю, что эта информация была очень полезна для наших участников, и им было все понятно. Спасибо вам большое.
And it was quite clear to them, and thank you so much for your kind attention.
Okay, no questions. Then I think we made a good job. Then it is clear. It is a splitting a connections instance from 1 into 2 or more does not happen every month. It happens once in a while, and then you need to know what needs to be done. Maybe you don't have the situation right now, and maybe it's clear what we did. If you run into the situation, please feel free to get in contact with us directly. You see our tweet here, Twitter account, you see my email address here. Please feel free to contact us anytime if you need some help or support, either in this concrete situation like splitting connections instance, or If you have any other kind of questions in regards of connect sessions this week at the Russian Notes user group, please look at them tomorrow with Anna. Friday, there will be more sessions which are going more into technical areas. Yeah, looking forward to see you again here.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.